right, so today we are looking at the first half of 11.2, which is trapezoids. We're going to get into a rhombus and a kite next week. So we're just looking at trapezoids today. So here is the one and only formula we're looking at for today. So this is the area of a trapezoid. So it is 1/2 the height times base 1 plus base 2. Guys, I'm going to go over those pieces here in just a second, but I wanted to remind you, the very last page of your notes has a place for you to keep a list of formulas as we go through them. So here is a new one that you can now add to your list, your area of a trapezoid. And so keep building this list as we go so that by the end of the chapter, you have all your formulas in one place. So keep that list going. So here's the one that you can fill in for today. Guys, on Monday we talked about, when we started going over trapezoids, we looked at what were the bases of a trapezoid. Well, remember, in a trapezoid, 2 of the sides are parallel. So if you look at the drawing that you see on the right, you can see that the top is parallel to the bottom. That makes those the bases. Okay, and so yeah, it doesn't have to be top and bottom. It could be left and right. There's no like direction that matters on this. What matters is that your bases are the 2 parallel lines. And so when you look at this formula, that's what you're seeing in parentheses. Okay, so we're going to be adding the 2 parallel lines together. The height, same with what we talked about in our last lesson, the height is always perpendicular to your bases. Okay, and so you can see the way the height was drawn is perpendicular to the bases. Other than that, the rest is just really identifying those numbers and then plugging them in. So you can see a pretty basic example for the one that they did right here. The height you can see in the middle was 15, so they put that in for the height. And then they did the 18 and the 40 as the 2 bases. And from there, it's just a matter of simplifying to get that area. So let's look at a couple together. Try to give you a little variation on some of these. And then again, at the end of this, after we do this one at the bottom, then we're going to end up looking at a couple in today's homework together, so I can guide you through some of those as well. So guys, look at the first one. One of the things that I want to continue to encourage you guys to do is there's really 3 lines you should be writing for any one of these, right? Your first line should just be a formula. Start by just writing the formula out. If we're going to find the area of a trapezoid, let's write out the formula, and then we'll start subbing in the pieces. Good question. It does not matter which one is base 1 or base 2 because we are adding them, right? Order doesn't matter when you're adding. So either one could be base 1 or base 2. So I always encourage you guys to start by just writing the formula first. Your second line should be the substitution line. This is where we sub in the actual numbers. So we're going to figure out the height, and we're going to figure out the 2 bases. And we're going to plug those in. So here's our substitution line. The height we can see in the middle is 16. And the bases, which are the parallel lines, would be the 32 and the 18. Looking like that. And then third line is simply the answer. So we can simplify all that. Now, guys, there's nothing wrong with using a calculator at this point, and on a test, I want you to use a calculator to at least check your answer. However, let's try a little mental math, because I think we could do it on this one. If we were to add our bases together, so think about that sum for a minute, 32 plus 18 would add up to
50.
50. We know half of 16 is 8. So essentially, we're looking at 8 times 50. We know 8 times 5 is 40. And then add another 0. Yep, you got your 400. Guys, on a test or a quiz, if you did not include the units, I don't mark you down for that, but let's at least mention it. Anytime you do an area of any shape, you're always supposed to say that it's the units squared. So properly, this would be 400 square feet. All right, take a look at number 2 with me. Guys, we already know right off the bat where the two bases are, right? If I look at the two parallel lines, I can see here's my base 1 and base 2. We can see the height. The height on this one was drawn on the outside. Remember, don't be thrown by that. It doesn't matter if they draw it on the outside or the inside. The dotted lines tell you that it's not part of the shape. It's just there to give you information, right? And so we're still seeing that. So I'm still going to start my first line always by just writing my formula. It's a great way to memorize formulas. It's just by writing it. So here's the formula. Let's plug into that. Guys, I like this one too because, again, does just as a reminder, remember the height doesn't have to be up and down. We always think of height as up and down, right? That's usually the way we picture height. But that's not how we define it within these shapes. The height is simply the perpendicular distance between the parallel lines. So that can definitely go side to side, up and down, whatever. So the height, the distance between our parallel lines is the 28. And then the bases are going to be those two parallel lines, the 12 and the 24. This one probably be a little tougher to do in your head, so I'll give you a minute here if anyone's trying to calculate that answer before I tell you what it is. What'd you get? I got 504. Oh, number 2. Oh, you got 504? Then we're good. And guys, again, if it's area, we do call it the units squared. Guys, there's a reason I'm pointing that out today. And you'll see it this last one. When if you're doing something like a word problem, notice on this one, they don't ask you what the area is. They say how many square feet. So I want you guys to recognize that when you see something like this, it's area, exactly. So I want you to know how to translate that if they don't specifically say area. So that's kind of why I'm hitting on the units a little more today. Guys, try number 3. Try that one on your own. It's pretty straightforward. Give it a shot. Jackson, you already got an answer on that one?
Yeah.
I already got an answer too.
Drew's already got an answer. Jackson, what do you got?
237.5.
Drew, what do you got?
820 meters squared.
All right, let's see. I'm hearing a few different ones. Make it a correction on yours.
How do you include a half without actually
Was it like maybe a calculator issue?
Yeah, because whenever I did like 38 and a half, I just parenthesized the half, so it wasn't like 381 divided by 2.
So yeah, there's a couple ways you could do this if you're going calculator. Personally, what I do is I just look at this and say, well, half of 20 is 10, right? So right off the bat, if I can do a little part of it in my head, I do. So that way it's less to put in the calculator, especially if I can avoid the fraction. So if this is an even number, then right off the bat, I just say, well, half of this is whatever that number is, and then I use that number instead of the 1/2. But even if you want to put it all in, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could say divided by 2 at the end, and that works. You could also say 0.5 times 20 times whatever. So it's really a matter of whichever one you prefer on that. So here's just one way of typing that in if I call the 1/2 0.5. So that would be an option. I try to avoid those if I can, though. I like saying half of 20 is 10 and using 10 times 32 plus 50.
Dude, what was the answer for number 7?
For which one?
7.
I haven't done that one yet. Dude, you're way ahead of me. You're an overachiever. Slow down.
Wait, so the instrument reads each one?
This is 820.
Oh, I thought you were doing number 7. I'm like, why is all
All right, guys, that's definitely kind of the heart of our lesson today. I'm going to go over a little variation with you right now, but we're almost done. We got one more to complete the notes, and then we're going to look at some homework together. Is there any questions going on so far, guys, with kind of the basics of this? Okay, look at one more with me before we jump into homework, because there's kind of an important thing on this I wanted to point out. There was a couple. So one thing I wanted to point out that I already mentioned was this idea of recognizing that when they say it's a unit squared, that implies area. Okay, and so if they were to say, you know, how many square feet, how many square inches, how many square yards, whatever unit they're using, when you see that word square, right, that implies this guy. It implies that we're doing an area. So recognize that. It does mean they're asking us for the area. The other thing is you look at this one, it's obviously a little less straightforward, and we got some fractions involved. Everybody loves some fractions in their life, so that's good. So let's just start with the basics. Let's start with our formula and see what we can identify here. And guys, like I said, you don't have to use fractions. If you prefer decimals, use decimals, as long as it's exact, right? So 1/2 can be exactly 0.5, so you can use 0.5. If it was something like 1/3, you can't get an exact decimal for 1/3 because it goes on forever. So I wouldn't encourage it for that. Dave, you got a question on this one, or you already got an answer for me? All right. Well, let me fill in a couple things first before you give me that answer. All right, so let's see what we can identify here. As I look on the outside, so you guys are seeing that the arrows are pointing to those lines right there. So they're telling us that the distance from top to bottom is 38.25. So that's going to be our height. And again, we're welcome to use fractions. You're welcome to use decimals. I'm going to go out on a limb and think most people would prefer the decimal. Probably easier to put in a calculator. So here's kind of the main thing I wanted to point out on this one, though. The bases. There's a major concept in here that's going to help us with some other problems. We know the top base is 20.5. What's the bottom base? Nice. You guys are awesome. Yeah, guys, just recognize that when they drew in these heights, then they're basically creating a rectangle right here, right? Which is a parallelogram. So we know that if the top is 20.5, then this piece right here is also 20.5. So that's something we want to recognize on this. And that's going to help us on a couple homework problems today. Guys, sometimes those dotted lines aren't there and you got to draw them in on your own. Okay, and so that's what we're going to see a little bit of today. But by drawing them in, it allows you to fill in some more information like this. So we're seeing the top base was 20.5. And the bottom base, if I add all the parts, so 5 plus 20.5 plus 5, would give us a total of 30.5. So we add up all those parts. Now we got everything. The rest is going to be calculator. Dave, what do you got?
I could be wrong, but I got 1,147.
It's looking just a little big to me.
You gotta divide it by 2.
I'm just going to type it in exactly the way I wrote it on my paper. Oops. So I'm going to say 1/2 times 38.25, 20.5 plus 30.5. So I'm just literally going to type it in exactly the way I wrote it on my page. And that's what I'm seeing as our area. Then I'm glad we're practicing these. Guys, did you put it in like in pieces, or did you do it all in one shot?
All in one shot.
Okay. If you do it all in one shot, make sure that you're putting in the proper parentheses, because that does matter. Especially where you see the addition, that has to be grouped in parentheses. Otherwise, your calculator may interpret that incorrectly. For example, if let's just say I did not put the parenthesis there, and instead of putting this at the beginning, I put it at the end, and I just said divided by 2. Well, without those parentheses, my calculator would only divide this number by 2 and not the total. So the parentheses do matter. That's why I would say the safe approach is to literally type it in exactly the way that you wrote it, and that you should be safe by doing that. Guys, that is it as far as the notes part of this goes. So you can kind of end sort of the notes at this point and make sure this page gets turned in today for your notes. But we are going to look at a couple further things together here. So Dave, what's up?
Is there a plus right there after 28.5?
Yeah.
20%?
Yeah, we got a plus right here.
Kind of.
What are you doing different on yours, Jackson?
So I just did what you did, and I just did decimals, and I got 981.75.
I don't know. Want to show it to me? Maybe I can see what's different about it. $38.25 instead of 38.5.
That makes sense. That's why